This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, visit LibriVox.org. Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain, Chapter 14, A General Good Time, The Harem, French. By and by, when we got up, we turned over the truck the gang had stole off in the wreck, and found boots and blankets and clothes and all sorts of other things, and a lot of books, and a spyglass, and 3 boxes of cigars. We hadn't ever been this rich before in neither of our lives. The cigars was prime. We laid off all the afternoon in the woods talking, and me reading the books, and having a general good time. I told Jim all about what happened inside the wreck and at the ferry boat, and I said these kinds of things was adventures, but he said he didn't want no more adventures. He said that when I went in the Texas and he crawled back to get on the raft and found her gone, he nearly died, because he judged it was all up with him any way it could be fixed, for if he didn't get saved he would get drownded, and if he did get saved, whoever saved him would send him back home so as to get the reward, and then Miss Watson would sell him south, sure. Well, he was right. He was most always right. He had an uncommon level head for a nigger. I read considerable to Jim about kings and dukes and earls and such, and how gaudy they dressed, and how much style they put on, and called each other your majesty and your grace and your lordship and so on, instead of mister, and Jim's eyes bugged out and he was interested. He says, "I didn't know dey was so many of 'em. I ain't heard about none of 'em, scasely, but old King Solomon, unless you counts dem kings that's in your pack of your cards. How much do a king get?" "Get?" I says. "Why, they get $1,000 a month if they want it. They can have just as much as they want. Everything belongs to them." "Ain't that gay? And what do they got to do, Huck?" "They don't do nothing." "Why, how you talk! They just set around." "No, is that so?" "Of course it is. They just set around, except maybe when there's a war. Then they go to the war. But other times they just lazy round or go hawking, just hawking and Shh! Do you hear a noise?" We skipped out and looked, but it weren't nothing but the flutter of a steamboat's wheel way down, coming round the point, so we come back. "Yes," says I, "and other times when things is dull, they fuss with the Parlyment, and if everybody don't go just so, he whacks their heads off. But mostly they hang around the harem." "Round the which?" "Harem." "What's the harem?" "The place where he keeps his wives. Don't you know about the harem? Solomon had one. He had about 1,000,000 wives." "Why, yes, that's so. I done forgot it. A harem's a bo'din house, I reckon. Most likely dey has rackety times in de nursery, and I reckon de wives quarrels considerable, and dat creased the racket. Yet dey say Solomon de wisest man to ever live. I don't take no stock in dat, because, why, would a wise man want to live in de midst of such a blim-blammin' all the time? No, 'deed he wouldn't. A wise man 'd take and build a biler factory, and den he could shut down de biler factory when he want to rest." "Well, but he was the wisest man anyway, because the widow she told me so, her own self." "I don't care what de widder say, he warn't no wise man nuther. He had some of der dad-fetchin'est ways I ever see. Does you know about that child that he was gwine to chop in two?" "Yes, the widow told me all about it." "Well, den, warn't dat the beatenest notion in the world? You just take and look at it a minute. Dar's the stump, dar. That's one of de women. Here's you. That's the other one. I's Solomon. And dish yer dollar bill's the child. Before you claims it, what does I do? Does I shin around 'mongs the neighbors and find out which un you de bill do belong to, and hand it over to the right one, all safe and sound, the way dat anybody dat any gumption would? No, I take and whack de bill in two, and give half on it to you, and t'other half to the other woman. That's the way Solomon was going to do with the child. Now I want to ask you, what's the use of the half a bill? Can't buy nothing with it. And what is the use of a half a child? I wouldn't give a dern for 1,000,000 of them." "But hang it, Jim, you've clean missed the point. Blame it, you've missed it 1,000 mile." "Who, me? Go 'long. Don't talk to me about your pints. I reckon I knows sense when I sees it, and dey ain't no sense in such doin's as that.
Dispute warn't about half a child, dispute was about a whole child, and a man that think he can settle a dispute about a whole child with a half a child don't know enough to come in out of the rain. Don't talk to me about Solomon, Huck. I knows him by the back." "But I tell you, you don't get the point." "Blame the point. I reckon I knows what I knows. And mind you, the real p'int is down furder. It's down deeper. It lays in the way Solomon was raised. You take a man that's got only one or two children, is that man going to be wasteful of children? No, he ain't. He can't afford it. He know how to value 'em. But you take a man that's got about 5,000,000 children running around the house, and it's different. He as soon chop a child in two as a cat. Dey's plenty more. A child or two, more or less, warn't no consequence to Solomon, that fetch him." I never see such a nigger. If he got a notion in his head once, there warn't no getting it out again. He was the most down on Solomon of any nigger I ever see. So I went to talking about other things, and let Solomon slide. I told about Louis XVI that got his head cut off in France long time ago, and about his little boy the Dolphin, that would be a king, but they took and shut him up in jail, and some say he died there. Poor little chap. But some says he got out and got away and come to America. That's good. But he'll be putty lonesome. They ain't no kings here, is they, Huck? No. Then he can't get no situation. What he gwine to do? Well, I don't know. Some of them gets on the police. Some of them learns people how to talk French. Why, Huck, don't the French people talk the same way we does? No, Jim, you couldn't understand a word they said, not a single word. Well, now, I be ding-busted. How did that come? I don't know, but it's so. I got some of their jabber out of a book. Suppose a man was to come to you and say, "Parlez-vous Francie," what would you think? I wouldn't think nothing. I'd take and bust him over the head, that is, if he warn't white. I wouldn't allow no nigger to call me dat. Shucks, it ain't calling you anything, it's only saying, do you know how to talk French? Well, then, why couldn't he say it? Why, he is a-saying it. That's a Frenchman's way of saying it. Well, it's a blame ridiculous way, and I don't want to hear no more about it. There ain't no sense in it. Look here, Jim, does a cat talk like we do? No, a cat don't. Well, does a cow? No, a cow don't neither. Does a cat talk like a cow, or a cow talk like a cat? No, they don't. It's natural and right for 'em to talk different from each other, ain't it? Course. And ain't it natural and right for a cat and a cow to talk different from us? Why, most surely it is. Well, then, why ain't it natural and right for a Frenchman to talk different from us? You answer me that. Is a cat a man, Huck? No. Well, then, there ain't no sense in a cat talking like a man. Is a cow a man? Or is a cow a cat? No, she ain't neither of them. Well, then, she ain't got no business to talk like either one or t'other of them. Is a Frenchman a man? Yes. Well, then, dad blame it, why don't he talk like a man? You answer me that. I see it weren't no use wasting words. You can't learn a nigger to argue, so I quit. End of chapter 14.